We're with Ted Fleener from Club Tonka. I'd like to welcome him here to St. Augustine in the Rox Volleyball headquarters.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So you were with us a few years back, right?
You know, it's when you were in Ocala. I know I can pronounce
That's a tough
it.
name.
Ocala. And I enjoyed our relationship tremendously. And then I left the sport. I went into actually doing some building back in 2005, and another coach took over. And she was in the sport for 5 years, but her husband and she moved out of the state. So I decided one day to just kind of think back on it and whether I wanted to do this or not. And Lynn, my wife, and I talked it over, and 5 years ago we started to come back. And quite honestly, we wanted to get right back into relationships, so Rox was at the top of our list. We had a feeling about what was going on in our region with other manufacturers, and one of them was Nike. And Nike approached us, and I have to say, great company, has some great product, but in general, I've never felt like there was a family involvement there. Here, you step in and you meet people that are on your staff, and of course you and Danielle in the midst of being great friends. And one of the things that proved that out is that you accepted me back so quickly.
Once you're family, you're always family.
Bless your heart for that, because that's
so
real.
We're always happy to have you back home.
That's real, and we love it here.
So, well, very good. We appreciate you coming back. What's one of your years you've been doing this? Name one of the biggest highlights. Can you name one?
Yeah, it comes pretty easy, actually, because it's all about players, right? We have one award a year that we give out in our entire club, and it's called Heart for the Game Award. And it's based off of a kid who showed that in a national tournament way back in the early 90s. And we started the next year to use Heart for the Game around this kid, and that's the highlight that I think of in terms of Club Tonka. We talk about our logo, and our motto, I should say, which is on the back of our shirts, which says spirit in sport. Well, spirit has a lot of variable to it. It's not only about your belief structure, but it's how you employ that into what you're doing with the sport. If you just have spirit, that's great, but in sport creates a different motto. Mm-hmm. And with this Heart for the Game Award, we look for that kind of a player. Someone who gives no matter what, not going to give up. I don't care what the score is. The score doesn't matter, because that takes care of itself if you're doing things on the court that you should. And the story goes is that this little young lady was at the AAUs, and she had a sprained wrist, and she was the setter on the team.
Not the injury,
Let me see, does this hurt at all, So we taped her up, and she went after it, and she played out, and she was really doing a good job. But it came to an interesting point, and this is a win story. There was a game where they needed to win to advance past where they were, and it was in the old scoring. So we had just served, and we could win the match on this next point. So at that time, you had to serve to get a point. So the ball is being rallied back and forth. All of a sudden, she's playing in that right back spot, and here comes a hit out of the middle, and it's hitting right at her, and she's going to dive for the ball. And at the very last second, she pulls her hand back, the ball goes out of bounds, and she lands on her wrist. You could see the grimace, but it was about her giving up her own pain for the value for the team. And it was what the Heart of the Game Award was for.
That's an awesome award.
It is. We have only one other award that we give out during the year, and that's our Coach of the Year. And our coaches fight for that.
No, very good.
Yeah. And I'm the director of that club, so then I get the wonderful opportunity to pick that coach that I see as...
Imagine that's challenging sometimes. You guys
it is. But they get it. The coaches understand there's only one. It's not that you're not all getting awards. So let's get to your pinnacle. And we don't duplicate that. We haven't in our history anyway. So they know that once they get it, they're taking a breath, because then they can keep that with them the rest of their lives. And this year it looks like it's between two, and I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, we'll be happy. We want to know about that. We'll stick it out there once you
absolutely
pick it.
Absolutely. The quickness more than anything else. The speed that the game's at today is the biggest factor. the fundamentals are the same, but the way they're trained and where they build up to a level that they can be that fast and that good. I watched the 12s championships. And I'm going, oh yeah, they could beat our 18s team, I'm sure. And I'm being facetious, but the speed is the biggest variable. And there aren't many things different about the game. It's funny to talk to coaches. Well, I've got this technique to do this, and I got this technique to do that. And, oh, I'm happy for you. How are the results for your kids? You know, do they pass well? Do they serve well? I have a certain, in my own coaching style, I have my preference of skills is to teach the serve first. Now, I know passing is considered one of the most important skills in volleyball, but if you can't serve the ball, you can't start the game. Mm-hmm. So you better learn how to do that. And our kids come in at 9 and 8 and 10 years old, and we're teaching them jump serves and trying to use their bodies to hit the ball in motion and start to become athletes with the game. And that's a whole new dimension. Back there in 75, let's get the ball in, kids.
Well, think about that too, is the ages that the kids are starting today. What did they start back in 75?
Oh my goodness. Junior high, right. You know, because they were coming out of basketball or something else and quit that and then started to come in. I think it's where if I did a soapbox position on any issue for our general population in volleyball, we don't do enough with our youth. Mm-hmm. We don't go deep enough. And these kids have fun. We started a little game called, well, it's typically used by John Kessel in some arenas too, but it's a young kids game. It just simply starts the ball out where there's 3 kids on a side on a reduced court, and you toss the ball in and the first kid catches it. Then they have to toss it to the next kid and they catch it. Then they toss it to the next kid and they catch it, and then they throw it over. What's the fundamental idea? You got to touch the ball 3 times before you send it over the net. Yeah. So the next portion to that is you toss the ball in, and the first player passes the ball. The next one catches it, throws it over, and you can see the progression. The next one is a pass, and then a pass over. And by the time they get this done, the young kids, 5, 6, 7 years old, can play that game, and they enjoy it. I don't know how you build that into the size of what's happening with Little League or some of those kinds of things, because you got these 7-year-olds out there in the middle, hats on and hitting the ball. But I think there's a way we should be thinking much more progressive about our youth, the youngest of them. Speed, and let's get more youth into this thing.
I agree. Great. You guys are doing a great job creating great players that'll represent the colleges and then go on to represent the country.
Yeah, we're having fun.
It's fun.
Yeah.
If you're not having fun, it's not worth doing.
Oh yeah, I heard that somewhere.
Go ahead, tell us your little history of your background there.
I grew up in an unusual area. It was the east side of St. Paul in Minnesota. And we had a street over there called Arcade, and that's where we had a YMCA, and one of the fathers was a zealot volleyball player, just loved the sport. And back then, that was in the early 60s. He would take his son and I up to the YMCA, and we'd work out. And we'd start getting a little better at the game, and we started playing against some of the same people that I coach against now. And we learned the game from its grassroots on how to pass. Some of the things we see today in the sport is that it's missing some of those very specific capabilities. I was listening to Mick Haley at a conference clinic one day and up in St. Cloud, Minnesota, and Mick said, what's the angle of your back when you are passing a ball with a free ball? What's the angle of your back? And all the coaches are going, 45, 70. It's 60 degrees, folks. That's what Mick said, 60 degrees. And that's how you can plan to pass a ball. So if you learn those things young, all of a sudden it stays with you. But we need to inspire our coaches to learn more of those specifics about the game. When I was 7th grade and learned those things, I then brought it into high school, went into college, played a little bit, but it was after college when I played the most. And I was teaching at the time, and I started coaching at the time. My first high school job was back in 1975, which was quite a while ago.
Did you used to wear those platform shoes to school with the big collars?
Yes, and the bell bottoms.
Oh, perfect.
They're perfect. That's right. We enjoyed our look at the time, thank you very much. And long hair.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, not this.
Sideburns too, right?
Well, yeah, I have this generation gap though right here. I just don't have any hair.
No hair there, so you couldn't do the...
No sideburns.
the Fonzie look or anything.
No, or the Elvis look for it.
The Elvis look, yeah.
Fonzie was your generation. Elvis was mine.
Yeah, there you go.
So I picked up on coaching in high school then, and then I left the game because I went out on my own. I taught school for 9 years, and then I went out on my own, and it was when my daughter decided to play the game that I then said, all right, I'm going to start a club. And that was 1988, and that was Club Tonka.
That's pretty awesome.
That year, Troy, we had 45 teams in the entire region for North Country region. Today we have over 3,000.
It's crazy.
That's the growth.
It is crazy what the sport's done. It's a great game.
Yeah, it is.
It's a great game. So, what's some of the challenges as a club director, especially when it comes to your uniform needs? What is your challenges?
Typically, uniforms are just the H word. They're a headache. That's what happens.
Is it the parents or is it the
yes,
and all the above?
Yeah, all the above. In reality, I think it's more the logistics part that, what I've found in our conversations is that you're progressive. Other companies end up being stuck in their own way. And that's the typically easiest thing to say about it, because when you innovate and change and get better and you start to take care of some of the flaws that we run into, and that flaws are, did the right uniform come in? And whose fault is that? And then it gets back to the club director, and believe me, I don't want to spend any time on the phone about uniforms, except to my friends.
Well, sometimes I know we all pull our hair out when we're trying to get these uniforms done with these, you'll agree that the sport is grown so much. Think of how when your first tournament used to be, we used to always just say MLK is that's our deadline. We've got to be ready to go by MLK.
Right.
Now you've got warm-up tournaments starting. You've got all these, so your window's gotten
squeezed.
Closed.
And interestingly about the window too, Troy, is this whole sense that there's a lot of competition to where teams want to go and be involved in the sport today compared to 20 years ago. It just wasn't there. Now they want you to come, and the tournaments are getting bigger. I mean, the North Country region is the second largest region in the whole USAV. And I'll tell you, that's a big number when it gets to the adults, and it's almost 20,000 people playing volleyball.
That's great.
In one region. So, and that doesn't even involve some of the things that happen at the other level, and that is recreation, and play. I think there was a time when the media could ignore volleyball. Today is not one of those times. Not when you got something as flashy as beach coming as strongly as it is, and certainly what's been with the growth of club. But back to uniforms in a brief sense is that if I could get my kids into a uniform that fits them and has a number they like, my job's done.
Happy. That's great, and that's what we try to do. We work very hard on trying to do that, and we work to try to listen to you, because you guys you're our connection to the volleyball community and the way that the system works when it comes to uniforms. We love all the input that you provide to us to try to make ourselves better.
Yeah.
And then we can just grow together and make you more successful.
Well, and that's recognized by people, Troy. That's why you are growing the way you are and looking for innovations. Your Roximation is phenomenal. Your whole capability of not having to go out of country, you're managing it from right here. You're 45 minutes away from your production.
Yes, it's nice to have the factory. We got a tour of the factory today too. So.
Spectacular people. What are you doing to get these people out? They're great folks.
We discussed that last night, right? Remember we said it's great people seem to hang around great people. And it's. I always think it's the customers make us who we are.
Yeah, and sometimes the customer makes bad decisions.
Sometimes, but you know what?
It is something that we talked about also, is that it's the circle of influence, the people that are around you that you keep as friends, and you know why they are your friends. You trust them. Right. You trust what their heart's about and why they're in the sport. Too often today we look up at the ceiling across gym space and we see banners. Really? Is that what we're in here about, the banners? Right. If that's the key, then there's a lot of people being left out. In our club, we stand on a very high principle of trying to build a citizen of the sport, not just trying to build a player, but the citizen of the sport that gives to the sport when they're done. And right now, my staff, we've got 6 of my previous players that are coaches for us.
No, you do a great job, and I have to say, I commend you on the way that you look at the game. It's, of course, everyone wants to win, but you're not just building wins. You're building a positive, reflection on these kids that's going to come out into society and actually be able to.
It's what we strive. I remember a teacher friend of mine saying one time and this is for all coaches actually, and that is when you're in the sport and you're giving of yourself, just remember every little touch that you have in communication to that player, you never know when it's going to hold, and they're going to take it with them in the rest of their lives. And that's what we're in the sport for. We're trying to help one another. Now, do I get competitive? Do I like to win? You should see me on the sidelines. I'm a pretty aggressive coach at times.
We all like to win.
We all like to win, but I'm not overwhelmed by it.
No, you do a great job with it, and I see it in your kids, and I see it in your club, and I think that's what makes the partnership so much stronger, because we have a lot of the same morals, ethics in the way that we do.
Amen.
things.
I agree with that.
So it's a pleasure to have you back, and thank you again.
Yes. Thank you for being who you are. That was fun.
Before you
A little bit.